Rich husband takes mistress on Babymoon while lying to his pregnant wife, until the hotel calls her. The Arizona sun painted golden streaks across the marble countertops of the Monroe kitchen, where Charlotte stood carefully arranging fresh orchids in a crystal vase. At 7 months pregnant, every movement required deliberate thought, her rounded belly making even the simplest tasks feel like choreography. She smoothed her silk robe over her bump, feeling the baby's gentle kicks against her ribs. "You're up early, beautiful." Grant's voice carried that familiar warmth that had first drawn her to him 4 years ago. He appeared behind her, his 6-foot frame impeccable even in pajamas, dark hair perfectly styled despite having just woken up. Charlotte turned, offering him the soft smile that had become second nature. "She's been active since 5. I think she's going to be an early riser like her daddy." Grant's hands found her waist, his touch practiced and sure. "Or maybe she's just excited about the new nursery furniture arriving today." He pressed a kiss to her temple, and Charlotte breathed in his cologne, the same expensive scent he'd worn since their wedding day. "The contractor said they'd be here by 10, Charlotte said, leaning into his embrace. After 3 years of trying, of failed treatments and crushing disappointments, this pregnancy felt like a miracle she was almost afraid to believe. "I can't wait to see it all come together." Grant's phone buzzed against the counter. He glanced at it, his expression shifting almost imperceptibly. "Actually, sweetheart, I have some news. There's been a development with the Seattle project." Charlotte's stomach tightened, though she wasn't sure why. "What kind of development?" "Nothing serious," Grant said quickly, his hand already reaching for his coffee. "Just some zoning issues that need my personal attention. I'll need to fly out this morning. Be back by Saturday evening." "This morning?" The words came out smaller than Charlotte intended. "But the furniture? You'll handle it perfectly. You always do." His smile was reassuring, practiced. "Besides, your mom said she'd come by this afternoon, right? You won't be alone." Charlotte nodded, pushing down the familiar flutter of anxiety that came whenever Grant traveled. Since the pregnancy, she'd become more emotionally sensitive, more prone to worry. Her doctor had assured her it was normal, but that didn't make it easier. "I hate leaving you like this," Grant continued, his voice taking on that gentle tone he used when he sensed her distress. "But this deal is crucial for the firm, for us, for her." He placed his hand on her belly, and Charlotte felt their daughter respond with a soft kick. "I know," she whispered, covering his hand with hers. "I understand." Grant's phone buzzed again. This time he answered immediately, his voice shifting to business mode. "Monroe here. Yes, I can be there by noon. Book the usual suite." Charlotte busied herself with breakfast, cracking eggs into a bowl, while Grant spoke in clipped professional tones. She'd learned not to listen too closely to his work calls. The real estate world was full of complicated deals and demanding clients that she didn't fully understand. "I'll need to leave in an hour," Grant said, hanging up. "Traffic to Phoenix Sky Harbor is going to be brutal." "I'll pack your bag," Charlotte offered. But Grant was already shaking his head. "Already done. Had to prepare last night after you went to bed." He pulled her close again, his hands gentle on her face. "You know I love you, right? You and our little girl are everything to me." Charlotte's eyes welled up, hormones making her more emotional than usual. "I love you too. So much." "Hey, none of that." Grant wiped away a tear with his thumb. "I'll be back before you know it, and when I am, we'll have everything set up perfectly for our daughter." 45 minutes later, Charlotte stood in their circular driveway, watching Grant's black BMW disappear around the curve. The house felt enormous behind her, its Spanish-style architecture suddenly seeming less like a dream home and more like an elegant prison. She pressed her hand to her belly, feeling the baby's reassuring movement. "It's just you and me for a couple days, little one," she whispered to her unborn daughter. "Daddy's working hard for us." The morning air was already warming, promising another scorching Arizona day. Charlotte turned back toward the house, her bare feet silent on the cool tile. She had a full day ahead: the nursery furniture, lunch with her mother, a conference call with her former design client who was begging her to come back to work part-time after the baby arrived. But first, she wanted to check the travel websites for Seattle weather, maybe send Grant a sweet text about dressing warmly. It was the kind of thoughtful gesture that had always made their marriage work, small acts of care that showed how much they meant to each other. Charlotte settled into Grant's home office, her fingers already reaching for his laptop. She knew his password, their anniversary date, and smiled at the trust it represented. In a world where so many couples seemed to drift apart, she and Grant had built something solid, something lasting, something that was about to shatter in ways she couldn't yet imagine. As she opened the browser, her phone buzzed with a text from Grant. "Boarding now. Miss you already. Take care of our girl." Charlotte typed back, "Fly safe. Love you." She had no idea it would be the last loving message she'd ever send him. What Charlotte didn't know was that Grant's flight wasn't headed to Seattle at all, and the woman waiting for him at their destination had been planning this weekend for months. Saturday afternoon arrived with the kind of oppressive heat that made even the palm trees seem to wilt. Charlotte sat in the newly furnished nursery, her hands resting on her belly as she admired the white crib and matching dresser that had been delivered the day before. The baby had been restless all morning, as if sensing her mother's inexplicable unease. Grant had called twice since Thursday, once from the airport, once from his hotel room. Both conversations had felt oddly rushed, filled with background noise and half-finished sentences. When she'd asked about the Seattle weather, he'd paused too long before saying it was typical Pacific Northwest stuff. "Maybe I'm being paranoid," Charlotte murmured to her unborn daughter, feeling a particularly strong kick in response. "Daddy's just stressed about work." The house phone rang, its shrill tone echoing through the expansive hallway. Charlotte pushed herself up from the rocking chair with some difficulty, her movements slow and deliberate. She rarely answered the landline anymore. It was mostly solicitors or wrong numbers, but something made her pick up. "Monroe Residence," she said, slightly out of breath. "Good afternoon. Is this Mrs. Monroe?" The voice was young, professionally cheerful with a slight accent she couldn't place. "Yes, this is Charlotte Monroe." "Wonderful. This is Diego from the Grand Marquis Resort in Miami. I'm calling to confirm a special delivery for your suite." Charlotte's hand tightened on the receiver. "I'm sorry, what?" "The champagne and chocolate selection for your anniversary weekend. Our concierge wanted to ensure everything was perfect for your celebration." Diego's voice remained bright, oblivious to the confusion he was causing. "Should we deliver it to your suite now, or would you prefer to wait until this evening?" The room began to spin slightly. Charlotte gripped the edge of the kitchen counter, her knuckles white. "I think there's been a mistake. My husband is in Seattle on business." "Oh no, ma'am, there's no mistake. Mr. Grant Monroe checked in yesterday afternoon. Room 1905, Ocean View Suite. He specifically requested the anniversary package." Charlotte's mouth went dry. "Yesterday afternoon?" "Yes, ma'am. He and Miss Jenna Hart were very pleased with the upgrade. Would you like me to connect you to their room?" The name hit Charlotte like a physical blow. Jenna Hart. She knew that name. Grant's new marketing coordinator, the blonde 20-something who had joined the firm 6 months ago, the one who worked late on all of Grant's projects, the one who laughed too loudly at his jokes during company dinners. "Ma'am? Are you still there?" Charlotte realized she hadn't breathed in several seconds. "Yes, I'm here. So should we proceed with the delivery?" "No." The word came out as a whisper, then stronger. "No, don't deliver anything. There's been a mistake." "But ma'am, the credit card payment has already been processed." Charlotte hung up the phone with shaking hands. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the hum of the air conditioning and the rapid beating of her own heart. She stared at the phone as if it might ring again and somehow deliver a different message, a reasonable explanation. Miami. Grant was in Miami with Jenna Hart, in an anniversary suite, while his pregnant wife sat alone in their empty house, believing his lies about Seattle. The baby kicked hard, as if responding to her mother's emotional turmoil. Charlotte placed both hands on her belly, feeling tears she hadn't realized were falling. "I'm sorry, baby girl, I'm so sorry." For several minutes she stood frozen in the kitchen, her mind racing through every conversation, every late night, every business trip that had seemed so legitimate. How long had this been going on? How many lies had she swallowed with trusting smiles? Her phone buzzed. A text from Grant. "Seattle is beautiful. Wish you were here to see it. Love you both." Charlotte stared at the message, her vision blurring. The casual cruelty of it, the ease with which he lied while she carried his child, felt like a knife twisting in her chest. She typed several responses, deleted them all, then simply turned the phone face down on the counter. She needed to think. She needed to process what she'd just learned. But most of all, she needed help from someone she could trust completely. With trembling fingers, Charlotte scrolled through her contacts until she found the number she was looking for. Robert Hale, her older brother, her protector since childhood, the one person who had never lied to her. The phone rang twice before his familiar voice answered. "Charlotte, everything okay?" "Robert." Her voice broke on his name. "I need you to come over. Now." "What's wrong?" Is it the baby? No, the baby's fine. It's Grant. I just found out. She couldn't finish the sentence. Saying it aloud would make it real. I'm on my way. Don't do anything until I get there, okay? Just breathe. Okay. Charlotte wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Robert? Yeah? Bring your laptop. And your legal files. There was a pause. When Robert spoke again, his voice had changed. Harder. More focused. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Charlotte hung up and walked slowly back to the nursery, her hand trailing along the wall for support. She settled into the rocking chair, her hands protective over her belly. The room that had filled her with such joy yesterday now felt like a monument to her naivety. Your daddy isn't who I thought he was, she whispered to her daughter, but that doesn't change how much I love you, or how much I'm going to fight for you. Outside, the Arizona sun beat down mercilessly, but inside the Monroe house something had shifted. The woman who had answered the phone as Grant's trusting wife was gone. In her place sat someone harder, someone who was beginning to understand that love without truth was just another form of betrayal, and Charlotte Monroe was done being betrayed. In Miami, Grant Monroe was toasting to his perfect weekend, completely unaware that his carefully constructed lies were about to cost him everything. Robert Hale's military bearing was evident even in civilian clothes. At 38, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced real danger and emerged stronger. His dark sedan pulled into Charlotte's driveway exactly 19 minutes after their phone call, gravel crunching under his tires like a promise of action. Charlotte watched from the living room window as her brother emerged from the car, his laptop bag slung over his shoulder, his expression already shifting into the focused intensity she remembered from their childhood. Robert had always been her protector, the one who confronted bullies, who checked her dates, who taught her to change a tire and balance a checkbook. Now, at 7 months pregnant and facing the biggest crisis of her life, she needed him more than ever. The door's open, she called out, her voice still hoarse from crying. Robert stepped inside, his sharp eyes immediately taking in Charlotte's appearance. The red-rimmed eyes, the way she held herself protectively over her belly, the tissue box clutched in her free hand. He set his bag down carefully and opened his arms. Come here, little sister. Charlotte collapsed against his chest, the tears she'd been holding back finally breaking free. Robert's embrace was solid, familiar, the same safe harbor it had been when she was 8 years old and had fallen off her bicycle. Tell me what happened, he said quietly, his hand stroking her hair. Everything. They settled on the couch, Charlotte's words tumbling out in broken fragments. The phone call from Miami, the anniversary suite, Jenna Hart's name spoken so casually by the hotel clerk, Grant's lies about Seattle, the text messages that now felt like daggers. Robert listened without interruption, his expression growing colder with each detail. When Charlotte finished, he was quiet for a long moment, his lawyer's mind already working through the implications. How long has he been traveling more frequently? He asked finally. Charlotte wiped her eyes. Since I got pregnant. He said it was because he wanted to secure bigger deals before the baby came. I thought he was being responsible. And this Jenna Hart? She started at his firm about 6 months ago. Young, blonde, ambitious. She's been working on all his major projects. Charlotte's voice turned bitter. I even complimented him once on having such a dedicated employee. Robert's jaw tightened. Where's his laptop? In his office. Why? Because we're going to find out exactly how deep this goes. Robert stood, his movements precise and controlled. But first, I need you to promise me something. Charlotte looked up at him, seeing the protective fire in his eyes that had terrified her childhood enemies and comforted her nightmares. You're not going to confront him. You're not going to call him. You're not going to do anything until we have a complete picture of what we're dealing with. His voice was gentle but firm. Can you promise me that? Robert, I can't just... Yes, you can, because you're not just Charlotte anymore. You're a mother, and mothers don't act on emotion. They act on strategy. He knelt beside her, taking her hands. Grant has been planning this betrayal for months. We're going to plan our response just as carefully. Charlotte nodded slowly, recognizing the tactical mind that had served her brother well in the Marines and now in corporate law. What do you need me to do? Right now? Nothing. Rest. Take care of yourself and my niece. Let me handle the detective work. Robert disappeared into Grant's office, and Charlotte could hear him settling in, the soft tap of keyboard keys, the quiet rustle of papers. She tried to rest, but her mind kept racing. Every memory of the past few months was being re-examined, recontextualized through the lens of betrayal. The late nights Grant claimed to be working, The new cologne he'd started wearing, the way he'd seemed distracted during their conversations, as if his mind was elsewhere, the sudden increase in business trips that always seemed to coincide with her doctor's appointments. An hour later, Robert emerged from the office, his expression grim. He carried a manila folder and his laptop. "Tell me you found something that proves this is all a mistake," Charlotte said, though she already knew from his face that hope was futile. "Charlotte, I need you to sit down." She was already sitting, but she gripped the couch cushions anyway. "How bad is it?" Robert opened the folder, revealing printed credit card statements and travel records. The trips to Miami started 3 months ago. Always the same hotel, always the same suite. He's been using the joint credit card to pay for everything. Charlotte's hands moved protectively over her belly. 3 months. I was barely showing then. It gets worse. Robert's voice was carefully controlled. He's been planning to leave you, Charlotte. I found emails discussing post-divorce financial arrangements. He's been moving assets, creating separate accounts. The words hit her like physical blows. He was going to leave me while I'm pregnant. He was going to let you file for divorce first. Make it look like your decision. That way he could play the victim, the devoted husband whose pregnant wife abandoned him. Charlotte stared at the papers, the evidence of her husband's calculated cruelty. And Jenna? From what I can tell, she's been promised a future with him. There are apartment listings in her name, restaurant reservations for dates that coincide with your prenatal appointments. Robert's voice hardened. He's been living a double life, Charlotte, with surgical precision. The baby kicked hard, as if responding to her mother's distress. Charlotte placed her hand over the movement, drawing strength from the life growing inside her. "So what do we do?" she asked quietly. Robert smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "We're going to give him exactly what he's been planning for, but on our terms, not his." "What do you mean?" "Grant thinks he's controlling this situation. He thinks he's going to come home tomorrow night with his lies intact, his future secure, his pregnant wife none the wiser." Robert leaned forward. "But we know the truth now. And truth, little sister, is the most powerful weapon you can have." Charlotte felt something shifting inside her. Not the baby, but something deeper. The grief was still there, the betrayal still burned, but underneath it all was something she hadn't felt in years. Anger. Pure, righteous anger. "I want him to pay for this," she said, her voice steady for the first time since the phone call. "He will, but we're going to do it right. Legal, methodical, devastating." Robert gathered the papers. "By the time Grant Monroe walks back into this house, we'll be ready for him." Charlotte nodded, feeling her daughter's strong kicks like a reminder of what she was fighting for. She wasn't just a betrayed wife anymore. She was a mother preparing to protect her child from a father who had already proven he couldn't be trusted. "What's the first step?" she asked. Robert's smile was sharp as a blade. "We let him come home, and we let him think he's gotten away with it." In Miami, Grant Monroe was enjoying a candlelit dinner with Jenna Hart, completely unaware that his carefully constructed world was about to collapse around him. Sunday morning arrived with an eerie normalcy that felt almost surreal. Charlotte sat at her kitchen table, methodically eating Greek yogurt with fresh berries while Robert worked silently across from her, surrounded by legal documents and financial statements. The scene looked domestic, peaceful even, nothing like the war room it had become. "Your prenatal appointment is Tuesday," Robert said without looking up from his laptop. "I think you should keep it." Charlotte nodded, spooning another bite of yogurt. She'd slept surprisingly well, exhaustion finally overcoming the emotional turmoil. This morning she felt different, clearer, more focused. "Dr. Martinez will want to know why my blood pressure is elevated. Tell her you're stressed about Grant's traveling, it's not even a lie." Robert's fingers moved across the keyboard with steady precision. "Have you heard from him today?" "One text. Missing my girls. Can't wait to be home." Charlotte's voice was flat, emotionless. "I didn't respond." "Good. Let him wonder." Robert finally looked up, studying his sister's face. "How are you holding up?" Charlotte considered the question seriously. "I keep waiting to fall apart. To cry or scream or something. But I just feel empty." "Is that normal?" "You're in shock. Your mind is protecting you while you process." Robert reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "The emotions will come in waves. When they do, don't fight them, but don't let them make decisions for you either." The baby stirred, a gentle rolling motion that made Charlotte smile despite everything. "She's been quiet today, like she knows something's changed." "Smart kid. She gets that from her mom." Charlotte's phone buzzed. A call from Grant. She stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over the decline button. Answer it, Robert said quietly. Act normal. Remember, he doesn't know that you know. Charlotte took a steadying breath and swiped to accept. Hi, honey. There's my beautiful wife. Grant's voice was warm, loving, the same tone that had once made her heart skip. Now it just sounded like another performance. How are you feeling? How's our little princess? We're good. A little tired. The nursery looks perfect. You're going to love it. Charlotte was surprised by how easily the words came, how natural her voice sounded. I can't wait to see it. And to see you. There was a pause, and Charlotte could hear ambient noise in the background. Voices, music, the kind of sounds that came from resort pools and beach bars. I miss you so much, Charlotte. Both of you. We miss you too. When does your flight land tomorrow? Around 6. I'll be home for dinner. Maybe we could order from that Italian place you love. The one with the really good breadsticks. Charlotte closed her eyes. It was such a perfect detail. Thoughtful, specific. The kind of gesture that had always made her feel cherished. Now she understood it was just another tool in his manipulation toolkit. That sounds wonderful, she managed. Great. I love you, sweetheart. Tell our daughter Daddy can't wait to feel her kick. I will. I love you too. The words tasted like ash in her mouth, but she forced them out because Robert was right. Grant couldn't know that his perfect deception had unraveled. Have a safe flight, she added, then hung up. Robert watched her carefully. How do you feel? Like I just had a conversation with a stranger. Charlotte set the phone down, her hand trembling slightly. The scary part is how good he is at it. If I didn't know the truth, I'd probably be excited about him coming home. That's what makes him dangerous. He's not just cheating, he's gaslighting you, making you question your own instincts. Robert's voice hardened. Men like Grant don't just betray once. This is a pattern. Charlotte nodded, remembering conversations with friends over the years. The wives who suspected but were told they were paranoid. The women who apologized for asking questions about their husband's whereabouts. Had she been one of those women without realizing it? I need some air, she said, pushing back from the table. Want company? No, I think I need a few minutes alone. Charlotte walked out to the backyard, settling into one of the cushioned chairs by the pool. The desert landscape stretched endlessly before her, red rocks and stubborn cacti that survived by adapting to harsh conditions. She placed both hands on her belly, feeling her daughter's reassuring presence. I don't know what kind of father he would have been to you, she whispered, but I know what kind of man he is now, and that's not the example I want you to grow up with. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Haven't heard from you since Friday. Everything okay? Charlotte stared at the message. Her mother, Nancy Hale, had always adored Grant. She called him the son she never had, and bragged to her bridge club about Charlotte's successful, handsome husband. The thought of telling her the truth felt overwhelming. She typed back, everything's fine. Grant's traveling for work. I'll call you tomorrow. Another buzz. This one from Grant. Just saw the most amazing sunset. Wish you were here to see it with me. Charlotte looked at the message, then at the Arizona sun beating down mercilessly on her backyard. She switched to her weather app and checked Miami. Partly cloudy, chance of rain. There had been no sunset worth photographing. Even his romantic gestures were lies. She screenshot the weather report and walked back inside, finding Robert still hunched over his laptop. He just texted me about a beautiful sunset, she said, showing him the weather data. It's been overcast in Miami all day. Robert glanced at the screen and shook his head. He's not even trying anymore. Probably recycled a photo from another trip, or another woman. The words hung in the air between them. Charlotte realized she'd crossed some invisible threshold, from denial to acceptance, from victim to survivor. Robert, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. He looked up, giving her his full attention. Do you think I was naive? Do you think I should have seen this coming? Robert closed his laptop and stood, moving to sit beside her on the couch. Charlotte, you trusted the man you married. You believed in your vows, in your family, in the future you were building together. That's not naive. That's what marriage is supposed to be. But the signs were designed to be invisible. Grant is methodical, calculating. He made sure his lies were believable, his excuses reasonable. This isn't your failure. It's his choice. Charlotte felt tears threatening again, but this time they were different. Not the desperate tears of betrayal, but something cleaner. Grief for the marriage she'd thought she had, yes, but also relief that the uncertainty was over. So what happens now? She asked. Robert smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. Now we finish what he started. Tomorrow night, Grant Monroe comes home to face the consequences of his choices. And if he tries to lie his way out of it, then he'll learn that his pregnant wife isn't the pushover he thought she was. Charlotte nodded, feeling something settle deep in her chest. For the first time in months, she knew exactly where she stood. Grant could have his lies, his double life, his calculated betrayals. She had something better, the truth, a fierce protector in her corner, and a daughter who deserved better than a father who thought love was just another game to be won. In Miami, Grant Monroe was taking selfies with Jenna Hart on the beach, already composing the lies he'd tell his wife about Seattle's imaginary skyline. Monday evening arrived with the weight of inevitability. Charlotte stood in front of her bedroom mirror, applying a light layer of lip gloss with steady hands. She'd chosen her outfit carefully, a flowing mauve dress that complemented her pregnancy glow, her hair styled in the loose waves Grant had always loved. To anyone watching, she looked like a devoted wife preparing to welcome her husband home. Only she knew it was actually armor. "You don't have to do this tonight," Robert said from the doorway. He'd spent the day at his own apartment, returning an hour ago with a leather briefcase and the kind of focused energy that preceded major battles. "Yes, I do." Charlotte turned from the mirror, her hand resting on her rounded belly. "Every day I wait is another day he thinks he's gotten away with it. Another day he gets to lie to my face." Robert nodded, understanding the steel beneath his sister's calm exterior. "The papers are ready. Everything's documented. Once you give him the choice to confess, we'll know exactly what kind of man we're dealing with." "I already know what kind of man he is." Charlotte's voice was quiet, but certain. "The question is whether he'll at least have the decency to be honest when caught." At exactly 6:47 p.m., Grant's BMW pulled into the driveway. Charlotte watched from the living room window as he gathered his luggage, a small carry-on that supposedly held 3 days' worth of clothes for Seattle's unpredictable weather. She wondered what was actually inside. Gifts from Miami? Evidence of his double life? Or just more props for his elaborate performance? The front door opened with Grant's familiar call. "Honey, I'm home." Charlotte took a deep breath, feeling her daughter shift restlessly as if sensing the tension. "In here," she called back, settling onto the couch with practiced ease. Grant appeared in the doorway, and Charlotte was struck by how tan he looked for someone who'd supposedly spent 3 days in the Pacific Northwest. His smile was radiant, his embrace when he reached her warm and seemingly genuine. "God, I missed you," he murmured against her hair, his hands gentle on her back. "And I miss this little angel." His palm found her belly, and their daughter responded with a sharp kick that made them both laugh. "She missed her daddy too," Charlotte said, the words coming easily despite the revulsion churning in her stomach. "How was Seattle?" "Productive but exhausting. The zoning meeting ran long yesterday, and the client dinner was brutal." Grant settled beside her, his arm around her shoulders in the gesture that had once meant safety and now felt like a trap. "But enough about work. How are you feeling? How was your weekend?" "Quiet. Robert came by for a while on Saturday. We worked on organizing the nursery." Charlotte watched Grant's face carefully, but his expression remained perfectly neutral at the mention of her brother. "That's great. I'm sorry I missed seeing it come together, but I promise I'll make it up to you." Grant's thumb traced gentle circles on her shoulder. "Actually, I brought you something." He reached for his carry-on, unzipping it to reveal a small wrapped box. "I saw this in a shop window and thought of you and our little girl." Charlotte accepted the gift with steady hands, unwrapping it to reveal a delicate silver bracelet with tiny musical note charms. It was beautiful, thoughtful, exactly the kind of gesture that had always made her feel cherished. "It's lovely," she said, meaning it despite everything. "Thank you. Here, let me put it on you." Grant's fingers were gentle as he fastened the clasp around her wrist. "The salesperson said the notes are supposed to represent lullabies. For when you're singing to the baby." Charlotte stared at the bracelet, its silver catching the lamplight. The cruelty of it, this beautiful, meaningful gift bought with lies, threatened to break through her carefully maintained composure. "Grant," she said quietly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. Anything." Charlotte turned to face him fully, studying the man she'd married, searching for any trace of guilt or uncertainty in his features. She found none. "Was there anything about your trip that you want to tell me? Anything at all?" Grant's eyebrows rose slightly. "What do you mean?" "Just, if something happened. Something you think I should know about." Charlotte kept her voice soft, giving him every opportunity to confess. "I want you to know that you can tell me anything. We're partners, remember?" For a moment, something flickered in Grant's eyes. so briefly she might have imagined it. Then his expression settled back into concerned confusion. Charlotte, what's this about? Did something happen while I was gone? I'm just saying that if you had something to tell me, now would be the time. Grant took her hands, his grip firm and reassuring. Sweetheart, you're starting to worry me. Is this about the pregnancy hormones? Dr. Martinez said some women experience anxiety. This isn't about hormones. Charlotte's voice sharpened slightly before she caught herself. I just think honesty is important in a marriage, especially now with the baby coming. I couldn't agree more. Grant's voice was earnest, his gaze direct. Charlotte, I love you and our daughter more than anything in this world. If something was wrong, if I had something to confess, don't you think I'd tell you? Charlotte stared into his eyes, the same brown eyes that had looked at her with such love on their wedding day, that had filled with tears when they saw their baby's first ultrasound. Now she understood that Grant Monroe could lie as easily as breathing, even to the woman carrying his child. Yes, she said finally. I suppose you would. Grant's smile returned, warm and relieved. Good. Now what do you say we order that Italian food? I'm starving and I want to hear everything about your weekend. As Grant reached for his phone to place their dinner order, Charlotte excused herself to the bathroom. In the privacy of the small powder room, she sent a simple text to Robert. He chose his path. The response came immediately. Then we move forward. You're stronger than you know. Charlotte deleted both messages and returned to the living room, where Grant was animatedly describing his fictional meetings with fictional clients about fictional zoning issues. He'd even invented names for the people he'd supposedly met, complete with amusing anecdotes about their quirks and opinions. The level of detail was breathtaking. The casual cruelty was devastating. You're an amazing storyteller, Charlotte said when he finished, and she meant every word. Grant laughed, pulling her close. One of my many talents. Lucky for you, my best stories are always true. Charlotte smiled and settled against his side, feeling their daughter's strong kicks between them. Tomorrow, Grant Monroe would discover just how much his pregnant wife had learned about the difference between stories and truth. Tonight, she would let him believe his performance had worked. I love you, she whispered against his shoulder, and the words weren't entirely a lie. She did love the man she'd thought he was. She mourned the father she'd imagined he'd be. She grieved for the marriage that had existed only in her mind. But the man sitting beside her, weaving elaborate fictions while his pregnant wife listened in silence, that man was a stranger, and tomorrow, Charlotte Monroe was going to introduce him to consequences. As Grant settled in for what he thought was another successful deception, he had no idea that his wife had already chosen her path forward, and it didn't include him. Tuesday morning arrived with crisp desert air and the kind of clear sky that promised scorching heat by noon. Charlotte woke before her alarm, Grant's arm still draped possessively across her waist. In sleep, he looked younger, almost innocent, a cruel reminder of the man she'd fallen in love with 4 years ago. She slipped out of bed carefully, her movements practiced from months of accommodating her growing belly. Grant stirred but didn't wake, his face peaceful in the early light filtering through their bedroom curtains. By the time Grant emerged from their bedroom, showered and dressed for another day of maintaining his double life, Charlotte was sitting at the kitchen table with herbal tea and whole-grain toast. She'd chosen her outfit deliberately, a simple navy dress that highlighted her pregnancy glow. Her hair pulled back in the style Grant had once said made her look elegantly maternal. Good morning, beautiful, Grant said, dropping a kiss on the top of her head before moving to the coffee maker. How did you sleep? Very well, actually. Charlotte sipped her tea, watching him over the rim. You? Like a rock. There's nothing like sleeping in your own bed after traveling. Grant's voice carried the easy warmth of a man without a care in the world. What's on your agenda today? Prenatal appointment at 11. Then I thought I might start packing up some of your summer clothes. You know, to make room for the baby things. Grant paused in the act of pouring his coffee. Packing up my clothes? Just the things you never wear anymore. That pale blue shirt with the frayed collar, the khakis with the stain on the knee. Charlotte's voice was casual, conversational. Unless there's a reason you want to keep them? No, that's fine. Good thinking. Grant's smile returned, but Charlotte caught the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Are you feeling okay? You seem different this morning. Different how? I don't know. Calmer, maybe. More focused. Grant studied her face. It's probably just the pregnancy. Dr. Martinez said the 3rd trimester can bring emotional changes. Charlotte nodded thoughtfully. You're probably right. I do feel different. More clear about things. Grant's phone buzzed against the counter. He glanced at it, and Charlotte caught the shadow that crossed his features before he dismissed the notification without reading it. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Just work stuff. Nothing urgent." Grant finished his coffee in 3 quick swallows. "I should head to the office. Big presentation today." He kissed her goodbye with the same tenderness he'd shown for years, his hand lingering on her belly to feel for their daughter's morning movement. "Take care of yourself today, okay? Both of you." "We will. Have a good day, honey." Charlotte remained at the table until she heard Grant's car pull out of the driveway. Only then did she allow her carefully maintained composure to crack slightly, her hands trembling as she reached for her phone. The text to Robert was simple. "It's time." His response came immediately. "I'm already on my way." Robert arrived 20 minutes later, his lawyer's briefcase in one hand and a large cup of coffee in the other. He'd dressed for battle in his best charcoal suit, the one that made opposing counsel nervous in depositions. "How are you holding up?" he asked, studying Charlotte's face. "I'm ready." Charlotte's voice was steady, certain. "I gave him every chance to be honest, every opportunity to show me the man I thought I married. He chose to keep lying." Robert nodded, setting his briefcase on the kitchen counter. "Good, because what we're about to do is going to change everything. Once we start this process, there's no going back." There was no going back the moment he boarded that plane to Miami. Robert opened his briefcase, revealing neat stacks of documents, photographs, and financial records. "I've prepared 3 different approaches depending on how he reacts. The nuclear option, the strategic withdrawal, and the middle ground." "What's the nuclear option?" "Full disclosure. Every lie, every betrayal, every dollar spent on his affair. Complete financial devastation in the divorce proceedings." Robert's expression was grim. "It's effective, but it's also brutal. Scorched earth." Charlotte considered this, her hand resting protectively on her belly. "And the middle ground? We give him the chance to leave quietly. Generous settlement terms in exchange for no custody dispute and a signed confession of adultery. He keeps some dignity. You get your freedom and financial security." "And the strategic withdrawal?" "We document everything, but negotiate privately. Minimize public humiliation while maximizing your position." Robert looked at his sister carefully. "Which approach appeals to you?" Charlotte was quiet for a long moment, feeling her daughter's gentle movements beneath her palm. When she spoke, her voice was calm, but resolute. "I want him to understand the full scope of what he's lost. Not just me, not just his daughter, but the respect and trust of everyone who matters." She met Robert's eyes. He made his choice deliberately, calculating the risk that I'd never find out. "I want him to live with the consequences of that calculation." Robert smiled, and it was sharp as a blade. "Nuclear option it is." They spent the next 2 hours organizing documents, reviewing legal strategies, and preparing for every possible response Grant might have. Robert's military precision combined with his legal expertise had created a case that was both emotionally devastating and legally bulletproof. "He'll be home around 6:30, Charlotte said, glancing at the clock. "He always texts when he leaves the office." "Perfect. That gives us time to set up properly." Robert began arranging documents on the coffee table with surgical precision. "Charlotte, I need you to understand something. The moment we start this conversation, Grant is going to try every manipulation tactic he knows. He'll appeal to your love, your sympathy, your hopes for your daughter to have a father. I know. He'll promise to change, to end the affair, to be the husband you deserve. He might even cry." Robert's voice was gentle but firm. "None of it will be real. It will all be calculated to save himself." Charlotte nodded, feeling a strange sense of peace settle over her. "I know exactly who Grant Monroe is now. Nothing he says is going to change that." Her phone buzzed with a text from Grant. "Presentation went great. Heading home to my favorite girls, love you." Charlotte showed the message to Robert, who shook his head in disgust. "Even now, he can't stop performing," he muttered. Charlotte typed back, "See you soon. I have something important to discuss with you." It was the first honest thing she'd said to her husband in 3 days, and it would be the last message she'd ever send to Grant Monroe as his wife. "Are you ready for this?" Robert asked, his hand supportive on her shoulder. Charlotte looked around the living room, the space where she'd dreamed of raising her daughter, where she'd planned Christmas mornings and birthday parties and quiet family evenings. Grant had poisoned all of that with his lies, but he hadn't destroyed her capacity to create new dreams. "I'm ready," she said, and meant it completely. Outside, the Arizona sun climbed toward its daily peak, relentless and unforgiving. In 30 minutes, Grant Monroe would walk through that door expecting another evening of successful deception. Instead, he was about to discover that his pregnant wife had learned to be just as strategic as he was. The difference was that Charlotte's strategy served the truth. As Grant Monroe drove home, humming along to his favorite song and planning his evening lies, he had no idea that his wife and brother-in-law were preparing to dismantle his carefully constructed world piece by piece. Grant's key turned in the front door at exactly 6:34 p.m. Charlotte could hear him humming, a casual, content sound that would have once brought her comfort. Now it only reinforced how effortlessly he lived with his deceptions. "Charlotte, I brought Thai food from that place you like," Grant called out, his voice carrying the warm anticipation of a man expecting praise for his thoughtfulness. "We're in the living room," Charlotte replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Grant appeared in the doorway, takeout bags in hand, his smile faltering when he saw Robert sitting in the armchair across from Charlotte. The coffee table between them was covered with manila folders, printed documents, and Robert's open laptop. "Robert," Grant's greeting was carefully neutral. "I didn't know you were coming by." "Sit down, Grant." Robert's voice carried the authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed. Grant's eyes moved between his wife and brother-in-law, clearly calculating. He set the food down on a side table with deliberate calm. "What's this about?" "Please sit," Charlotte said quietly, gesturing to the couch across from her. Grant remained standing, his posture shifting almost imperceptibly. Charlotte recognized the change. It was the same stance he adopted during difficult business negotiations, alert and defensive while maintaining an appearance of control. "I think I'll stand, thanks." "Charlotte, what's going on? You said you had something important to discuss." Robert reached for the top folder and opened it with methodical precision. "Grant, we know about Miami." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Charlotte watched her husband's face, cataloging every micro-expression. She saw the moment the carefully maintained mask slipped, a flicker of panic before his features rearranged themselves into confused innocence. "Miami? What are you talking about?" "The Grand Marquis Resort, room 1905, Jenna Hart." Robert's voice was clinical, factual. "The anniversary package you ordered for your weekend getaway while your pregnant wife sat alone in this house." Grant's laugh was forced, brittle. "This is insane. I was in Seattle. I have receipts, boarding passes, forged." Robert pulled out a printed itinerary. "Your actual flight records show Phoenix to Miami on Thursday morning, returning Monday evening. Would you like to see the credit card charges for the Ocean View suite?" Grant's composure cracked further. "You've been spying on me? Going through my private—" "Nothing's private in a marriage, Grant." Charlotte spoke for the first time since he'd entered the room. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. Or at least it shouldn't be. Grant turned to her, his expression shifting to wounded confusion. "Charlotte, sweetheart, whatever Robert thinks he's found, there's an explanation. Let me—" "The hotel called me." Charlotte's words cut through his protest like a knife. "Saturday afternoon. They wanted to confirm the champagne delivery for your suite, the one you were sharing with your marketing coordinator." Grant's face went white. For a moment, the room was completely silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and the rapid tick of the grandfather clock in the corner. "Charlotte, I can explain." "No." Charlotte's voice remained steady, but there was steel beneath the calm. "You had your chance to explain. I asked you directly on Monday night if there was anything you wanted to tell me. You looked me in the eye and lied. I was protecting you. You're pregnant, stressed. From what?" Charlotte's voice rose slightly. "From the truth about the man I married? From knowing that my husband was planning to abandon me while I carry his child?" Robert leaned forward, pulling out another set of documents. "We found the emails, Grant. The apartment listings you've been viewing with Jenna, the separate bank accounts, the divorce strategy discussions." Grant's mask finally shattered completely. "You have no right to—" "I have every right." Charlotte struggled to her feet, her hand protective over her belly. "I'm your wife. I'm carrying your daughter. And you've been systematically planning to destroy our family while pretending to love us." Grant's desperation was becoming visible now, his composure completely abandoned. "Charlotte, please, just listen to me. What we have is real. This thing with Jenna, it's nothing. It's just physical. It doesn't mean anything." The casual cruelty of the words hit Charlotte like a physical blow. After everything, the lies, the betrayal, the calculated deception, he was still trying to minimize and manipulate. "It doesn't mean anything?" Charlotte's voice was quietly dangerous. Then why have you been planning to leave me for her? I haven't. I would never. Stop lying. The words exploded from Charlotte with surprising force. Just stop lying. I know about the Miami trips that started 3 months ago. I know about the credit cards you've been using to finance your affair. I know about the future you've been planning that doesn't include your pregnant wife. Grant took a step toward her, his hands outstretched in supplication. Charlotte, I made mistakes. Big ones. But we can fix this. We can work through. Don't come near me. Charlotte's voice was ice. Don't touch me. Don't pretend that what you've done can be fixed with apologies and promises. Robert stood, moving slightly closer to his sister. Grant, you need to understand your position here. We have documented evidence of adultery, financial misconduct, and abandonment. In Arizona's legal system, this gives Charlotte significant advantages in divorce proceedings. Divorce? Grant's voice cracked. Charlotte, you can't be serious. Think about our daughter. Think about our family. Charlotte laughed and the sound was bitter. Our family. Grant, you checked out of our family the moment you boarded that plane to Miami. You just forgot to tell me. I was confused. The pregnancy, the pressure at work. The pregnancy? Charlotte's voice turned deadly quiet. You used my pregnancy as an excuse to cheat on me? The fact that I'm carrying your child made you feel justified in betraying me? Grant's mouth opened and closed silently. Even he seemed to realize how his words sounded. Robert placed a protective hand on Charlotte's shoulder. Grant, you have two choices. You can continue this pathetic performance, or you can start acting like a man and face the consequences of your actions. What consequences? Grant's voice was hollow now, defeated. Charlotte reached for a document from the coffee table. The divorce papers Robert had prepared with surgical precision. You're going to sign these. You're going to move out of this house. And you're going to accept that you forfeited any right to be part of our lives the moment you chose Jenna Hart over your family. Grant stared at the papers as if they were written in a foreign language. Charlotte, please, I'm begging you. Give me a chance to make this right. You had that chance. You had it Monday night when I practically begged you to be honest with me. Charlotte's eyes were dry, her voice steady. You chose to lie. Again. I was trying to protect yourself. You were trying to protect yourself. Charlotte moved toward the window, looking out at the desert landscape she'd grown to love. The man I married would have told me the truth. He would have respected me enough to be honest about his feelings, his doubts, his mistakes. She turned back to face Grant, and he flinched at what he saw in her eyes. That man doesn't exist. He never did. And I'm done pretending otherwise. In that moment, Grant Monroe finally understood that his carefully constructed world hadn't just cracked. It had completely collapsed. And the woman he'd underestimated was the one holding the wrecking ball. Grant sank onto the couch as if his legs could no longer support him. The confident, charismatic executive who had walked through the door 30 minutes ago was gone, replaced by a man who looked suddenly older, smaller, diminished. You can't do this, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Charlotte, I know I messed up, but you can't just throw away 4 years of marriage over a mistake. A mistake? Charlotte turned from the window, her eyes blazing. Grant, you've been living a double life for months. You've been using our joint credit cards to wine and dine another woman while I sat here alone, pregnant and worried about you. That's not a mistake. That's a choice you made over and over again. Robert pulled out his phone, scrolling through screenshots. Should we go through the timeline, Grant? The first Miami trip was 12 weeks ago, right after Charlotte's 20-week ultrasound where you found out you were having a daughter. The same week you booked that first weekend getaway with Jenna. Grant's head snapped up. How could you possibly know that? Credit card records, hotel receipts, flight manifests. Robert's voice was matter-of-fact. Did you really think you could hide financial transactions from a corporate lawyer? Or that your pregnant wife wouldn't eventually notice her husband was spending more time with his 26-year-old marketing coordinator than with his family? Jenna is 26? Charlotte's voice was hollow. You're having an affair with someone barely older than our babysitter? Grant flinched. Her age tells me everything I need to know about the kind of man you really are. Charlotte moved carefully back to her chair, her hand supporting her belly. She's young enough to be impressed by your lies, young enough to believe your promises about leaving your pregnant wife. I never promised to leave you. Robert held up his laptop screen. Email dated 3 weeks ago. Quote, once the baby is born and Charlotte is more stable, we can start our real life together. I've already talked to my lawyer about the best way to handle the transition. The silence that followed was deafening. Grant stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. You talked to a lawyer? Charlotte said, her voice deadly quiet. You were planning to divorce me, and you already consulted legal counsel, while I was picking out nursery furniture and planning our daughter's first Christmas. Charlotte, it wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Grant? Charlotte leaned forward, her eyes never leaving his face. Explain to me what it was like. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you were systematically planning to abandon your family while pretending to be excited about becoming a father. Grant's composure cracked completely. I was scared, okay? The baby, the responsibility, the pressure to be this perfect husband and father when I don't even know if I'm ready for any of it. So you decided to have an affair instead of talking to your wife? I didn't decide anything. It just happened. Jenna was there. She understood the pressure I was under. The pressure you were under? Charlotte's voice rose dangerously. What about the pressure I was under? Carrying your child, dealing with morning sickness, worrying about money and the future while you were in Miami drinking champagne with your girlfriend? Grant buried his face in his hands. I know how it looks. It looks like exactly what it is. A selfish man who got his secretary pregnant. You're not my secretary. No, I'm your wife, which makes it worse. Charlotte's voice turned ice cold. At least if I were just your secretary, I could quit and find a better job. But I'm tied to you forever through our daughter, which means I get to watch you fail her the same way you failed me. Grant looked up, desperation clear in his eyes. I won't fail her. I want to be a good father. Based on what evidence? Robert interjected. You've already proven you'll abandon her when things get difficult. You've shown that your comfort matters more than her stability. That's not fair. Fair? Charlotte struggled to her feet again, her pregnancy making the movement awkward. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been you coming to me when you were feeling overwhelmed instead of running to another woman. Fair would have been honest conversations about your fears instead of elaborate lies about business trips. Grant's phone buzzed on the coffee table. All three of them looked at it, and Charlotte could see Jenna's name on the screen before Grant quickly flipped it face down. She's wondering where you are, Charlotte observed, her voice conversational. Does she know you're here, confessing your affair to your pregnant wife? Or did you tell her you had a late meeting? Grant's silence was answer enough. Even now, Charlotte continued, you're still lying to both of us. Still managing your double life. Still trying to control the narrative. Charlotte, please. No. Charlotte's voice cut through his plea like a blade. I'm done with your pleases and your promises and your explanations. I'm done being married to someone who thinks love is just another negotiation he can win. Robert stood, gathering the divorce papers. Grant, you have 48 hours to vacate this property. You can take your personal belongings, but everything else stays here. The house, the joint accounts, the cars. Charlotte will need them to raise your daughter. You can't kick me out of my own house. Actually, we can. Robert's smile was sharp. The house is in both names, but given your documented adultery and abandonment, a judge will grant Charlotte temporary exclusive possession pending the divorce proceedings. Grant turned to Charlotte, his eyes pleading. Charlotte, I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for mercy. For our daughter's sake, if not for mine, let me try to make this right. Charlotte studied her husband's face, really looked at him for perhaps the first time in months. She saw the desperation there, the fear, the realization that his carefully planned deception had collapsed around him. But she also saw something else. Calculation. Even now, even caught red-handed, he was strategizing his next move. Grant, she said quietly, if you truly loved our daughter, you would have thought about her before you got on that plane to Miami. If you respected me as your wife, you would have been honest about your doubts instead of lying to my face for months. She moved closer to him, close enough to see the fine lines around his eyes that she'd once found distinguished. You didn't make a mistake, Grant. You made a series of deliberate choices that put your own desires above your family's well-being. And now you get to live with the consequences of those choices. Grant's facade finally crumbled completely. I'm sorry, he whispered. And for the first time, Charlotte thought she might be hearing something genuine. I'm so sorry, Charlotte. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did hurt me. You hurt our daughter. And worst of all, you don't even understand how. Charlotte backed away from him, her hand protective over her belly. A man who loved us would have found a way to work through his fears without betraying us. You're not that man. The baby kicked hard, as if responding to her mother's emotional state. Charlotte winced slightly, and Grant started to reach for her before catching himself. Don't, Charlotte said softly. You lost the right to comfort me the moment you chose someone else. Grant's shoulders sagged in defeat. For the first time since entering the room, he seemed to truly understand that his marriage was over. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice hollow. Robert handed him a pen. "Now you sign the papers and start the process of becoming the kind of man your daughter might someday respect." "Though honestly, Grant, I wouldn't hold my breath." As Grant stared at the divorce papers with shaking hands, Charlotte felt her daughter's strong kick and realized that some endings were actually beginnings in disguise. Grant stared at the divorce papers for a full minute, the pen trembling in his hand. The silence in the room was thick, broken only by the soft tick of the grandfather clock and the distant hum of evening traffic on the street outside. "If I sign these," Grant said finally, his voice hoarse, "I lose everything. My home, my daughter, my future. You lost those things the moment you chose to betray them," Charlotte replied, her voice steady despite the exhaustion she felt deep in her bones. "Signing the papers just makes it official." Grant looked up at her, and for a moment Charlotte saw a flash of the man she'd fallen in love with. Vulnerable, uncertain, human. Then his expression hardened, and she realized he was making one final calculation. "What if I refuse to sign?" he asked, directing the question to Robert. "What if I fight this? Claim temporary insanity, emotional distress, anything that might get me a better deal?" Robert's laugh was cold. "Then we take this to court, and everything becomes public record. Your affair, your lies, your financial misconduct, all of it exposed for your colleagues, your clients, your family to see. You wouldn't try us." Charlotte's voice was granite. "Grant, I've spent the last 3 days learning exactly who you really are. A man who would threaten to drag his pregnant wife through a public legal battle rather than accept responsibility for his actions? That's exactly the kind of man you are." Grant's phone buzzed again. This time he answered it, his voice clipped. "Not now, Jenna." "I said not now. We'll talk later." He hung up, and Charlotte felt something settle deep in her chest. A final, crystalline moment of clarity. "She doesn't even know, does she?" Charlotte asked quietly. "Know what?" "That your wife found out. That your perfect plan fell apart. You're still managing both of us, still trying to control both narratives." Charlotte shook her head in amazement. "Even now, facing the end of your marriage, you can't stop manipulating and lying." Grant's face flushed. "I was trying to protect—" "Stop!" Charlotte held up her hand. "Just stop. I don't want to hear another word about protection or love or anything else you think might convince me to change my mind." She moved to stand in front of him, her pregnancy making her movements deliberate but powerful. "Grant, I'm going to give you one final choice. Not because you deserve it, but because our daughter deserves to know that her mother tried everything possible to give her father the chance to be a decent man." Grant looked up at her, hope flickering in his eyes. "You can sign these papers with dignity. Accept responsibility for your choices. Agree to a fair custody arrangement, and commit to being the kind of father our daughter deserves, even if you couldn't be the husband I needed." Charlotte paused, her hand resting on her belly. "Or you can fight this. Drag us all through a legal battle that will destroy whatever remains of your reputation and cost our daughter the chance to have any relationship with her father." "What kind of custody arrangement?" Grant asked, his business instincts still calculating angles. Robert pulled out another document. "Supervised visitation until the child is 5, then reassessment based on your demonstrated commitment to sobriety, honesty, and stability. Financial support calculated according to state guidelines, which, given your income, will be substantial." "Supervised visitation?" Grant's voice cracked. "You're treating me like a criminal." "You are a criminal," Charlotte said flatly. "You stole 3 months of my life with your lies. You used our joint assets to finance an affair. You plan to abandon your pregnant wife without her knowledge. Those are crimes against our family, even if they're not crimes against the state." Grant stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "This is insane. You're both acting like I killed someone. People have affairs, Charlotte. It happens. Most couples work through it. Most couples work through it when the unfaithful spouse shows genuine remorse and commits to change," Robert said. "You've shown neither. Even caught red-handed, you're still trying to minimize your actions and negotiate a better deal." "I am sorry." Grant turned back to them, his face flushed with anger and desperation. "I've said I'm sorry. What more do you want?" "I want you to mean it," Charlotte said quietly. "I want you to understand that sorry isn't a magic word that erases consequences. I want you to accept that you broke something that can't be fixed with apologies." Grant stared at her, and Charlotte could see him struggling with a choice she couldn't make for him. The old Grant, the manipulative, calculating Grant, was fighting with whatever remained of the man she'd once loved. "If I sign these papers," he said finally, "what guarantee do I have that you won't turn our daughter against me?" "None," Charlotte replied honestly, "but I can promise you this. I will never lie to her about who you are. When she's old enough to understand, I'll tell her that her father is a man who makes choices based on what's easiest for him, not what's right for his family. Whether that turns her against you will depend on whether you prove me wrong." Grant's face went white. "That's not fair. Fair would have been you thinking about our daughter before you betrayed our family." Charlotte felt the baby kick hard, as if agreeing with her mother. "But I'm not interested in punishing you, Grant. I'm interested in protecting our daughter from a father who might abandon her the way he abandoned me." Grant looked at the papers again, then at Charlotte, then at Robert's implacable expression. Charlotte could see the exact moment when he realized that his charm, his negotiations, his manipulation, none of it was going to work. "You're really going to destroy our family over this?" he asked, his voice small. "I'm not destroying our family, Grant. I'm saving what's left of it." Charlotte sat down carefully, her hand never leaving her belly. "Our daughter is going to grow up knowing that her mother fought for truth, honesty, and integrity. That's the family I'm building for her." Grant picked up the pen again, his hand shaking. "And if I refuse? Then you'll discover that a pregnant woman protecting her child is more dangerous than any business rival you've ever faced," Charlotte said, her voice soft but lethal. Grant stared at her for a long moment, and Charlotte saw the exact instant when he finally understood that the woman he'd married, the trusting, accommodating woman who had believed his lies and accepted his excuses, was gone forever. In her place sat someone harder, clearer, more formidable than he had ever imagined possible. Someone who would not be manipulated, negotiated with, or defeated. Someone who had learned that love without respect was worthless, and that a marriage built on lies was no marriage at all. Grant signed the papers. As Grant Monroe scrawled his signature across the documents that would end his marriage, Charlotte felt her daughter move restlessly in her womb, as if the baby could sense that her world was about to become much safer, even if it would be smaller. 6 weeks later, Charlotte stood in the kitchen of her new home, sunlight streaming through windows that faced east instead of west, illuminating a space that was smaller but infinitely brighter than the house she'd shared with Grant. At 38 weeks pregnant, every movement was deliberate, but there was a lightness to her steps that hadn't been there in months. The house was a charming craftsman bungalow in a quiet neighborhood near her mother's place, with hardwood floors that creaked welcomingly, and a nursery that overlooked a garden instead of a golf course. Robert had found it for her, a foreclosure that needed work but had good bones, much like Charlotte herself. "The contractor says the back porch will be finished by next week," Robert said, emerging from what would soon be his niece's nursery. He'd been spending most of his weekends here, helping Charlotte prepare for the baby while keeping a protective eye on his sister's emotional recovery. "Perfect timing," Charlotte replied, arranging fresh flowers in a simple vase. "Mom wants to host a small baby shower here once everything's settled." Robert studied her face. "How are you feeling?" "Really?" Charlotte considered the question, one hand resting on her belly as the baby shifted restlessly. "Strong," she said finally. "Scared about becoming a single mother, but strong." "And Grant?" Charlotte's expression didn't change, but something hardened in her eyes. "Grant moved out of the Scottsdale house 3 days after signing the papers. Word is he's living in a corporate apartment downtown while his lawyer handles the asset division. And Jenna? Gone." Charlotte's voice was matter-of-fact. Apparently, learning that her married boyfriend was actually getting divorced and losing half his assets in the process made him significantly less attractive. She put in for a transfer to the company's Denver office 2 weeks ago. Robert shook his head. "How did you find that out?" "Grant's former secretary called me. Turns out she never liked him much and thought I should know that his great love affair lasted exactly 12 days after I filed for divorce." Charlotte smiled, and it was sharp as glass. Amazing how quickly passion fades when there are actual consequences involved. The doorbell rang, interrupting their conversation. Charlotte moved carefully toward the front door, Robert following protectively behind her. Dr. Martinez stood on the porch, medical bag in hand and concern written across her features. "Charlotte, I got your message about the contractions. How far apart are they?" "About 15 minutes, Charlotte replied, ushering her doctor inside. "But they're getting stronger." Dr. Martinez set her bag down in the living room, her experienced hands gentle as she examined Charlotte. "Your blood pressure is perfect, your color is good. and this little one seems eager to make her debut. Is it time? Charlotte asked, surprised by the calm in her own voice. I think we should head to the hospital soon, but first, Dr. Martinez looked between Charlotte and Robert. Is there anyone else you want to call? The baby's father? Charlotte and Robert exchanged a look. They'd discussed this moment extensively over the past few weeks. Grant knows my due date, Charlotte said quietly. If he wants to be there, he'll find a way, but I'm not calling him. Doctor. Martinez nodded, understanding the weight behind those words. In 6 weeks of treating Charlotte, she'd watched her patient transform from an anxious, dependent woman into someone fierce and self-possessed. Then let's go have a baby, she said with a smile. 4 hours later, Ava Monroe entered the world at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night, weighing 7 pounds and 3 ounces, with her mother's determined chin and her father's dark hair. Charlotte held her daughter for the first time in the quiet hospital room, Robert beside her with tears in his eyes that he wasn't bothering to hide. She's perfect, he whispered, his finger gently stroking Ava's tiny hand. Charlotte studied her daughter's face, the features she'd imagined for months now real and breathing in her arms. Hello, beautiful girl, she murmured. I'm your mama, and I've been waiting so long to meet you. Ava's eyes opened briefly, unfocused but alert, as if she were trying to get her bearings in this bright, noisy new world. Charlotte felt something settle deep in her chest. Not peace exactly, but purpose. This was what she'd been fighting for. This was why Grant's betrayal, devastating as it had been, was also the beginning of something better. Has anyone called Grant? Dr. Martinez asked gently. Charlotte looked down at her daughter, then at Robert. No, and we're not going to. She'd thought about this moment extensively during the long weeks of preparation. Grant had made his choice when he chose Jenna over his family. He'd made it again when he tried to negotiate custody terms like a business deal. He'd made it a third time when he'd failed to call or check on Charlotte during the final weeks of her pregnancy. If he wants to meet his daughter, he knows where to find us, Charlotte said. But I'm not going to beg him to be a father any more than I begged him to be a husband. Robert squeezed her shoulder. You're doing the right thing. Charlotte looked down at Ava, who had fallen asleep in her arms with the complete trust that only newborns possessed. I'm doing the only thing I can do, protecting her from people who might hurt her. 2 days later, Charlotte brought Ava home to the little craftsman house with its creaky floors and sun-filled rooms. Her mother was there to help, along with Robert and a handful of close friends who had rallied around her during the divorce. Grant never called. 1 week after Ava's birth, Charlotte received a certified letter from Grant's attorney. Inside was a formal notification that Grant Monroe was voluntarily relinquishing all parental rights to his daughter, along with a cashier's check for $50,000. The letter explained that Mr. Monroe had reassessed his capacity for fatherhood and felt it was in the child's best interest for him to step away entirely. There was no mention of regret, no personal message, no acknowledgement that he was abandoning his week-old daughter. Charlotte read the letter twice, then handed it to Robert without comment. He's running away, Robert said, his voice disgusted, even from his own child. No, Charlotte replied, settling into the rocking chair with Ava in her arms. He's giving us the greatest gift he could possibly give, his absence. She looked down at her daughter, who was nursing contentedly, completely unaware that her father had just legally erased himself from her life. Ava will never have to wonder if her father loves her, Charlotte continued. She'll never have to make excuses for his behavior or hope that he'll change. She'll grow up knowing that her family, her real family, consists of people who choose to be there. Robert sat down across from her, watching his sister with something approaching awe. You're not even angry. Charlotte considered this. I was angry. For weeks I was furious. But now? She adjusted Ava in her arms, marveling at how perfectly her daughter fit there. Now I'm grateful. Grant showed me exactly who he was, and I chose to believe him. Most importantly, I chose to act on that knowledge, instead of hoping he'd change. And now? Charlotte smiled, and for the first time in months it reached her eyes completely. Now I get to raise my daughter without worrying that her father will disappoint her. I get to build the life I actually want instead of the life I thought I was supposed to want. Ava stirred in her arms, making the soft sounds that newborns make when they're completely content. Charlotte stroked her daughter's dark hair, already imagining the woman she might become, strong, independent, unafraid to demand the respect she deserved. Thank you, Charlotte whispered to her sleeping daughter, for giving me the courage to save us both. Outside, the Arizona sun was setting over the desert, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Inside the little house with its creaky floors and perfect light, Charlotte Monroe rocked her daughter and planned their future. A future built on truth, integrity, and the unshakable knowledge that some endings were actually the most beautiful beginnings of all. 1 year later, Charlotte Monroe stood in her garden, watching her daughter take her first tentative steps between the raised beds where tomatoes and herbs grew in the desert sun. Ava was fearless, determined, reaching always for the next thing that caught her interest. Charlotte had returned to work part-time as an interior design consultant, building a client base that appreciated her eye for creating beautiful spaces from broken-down structures. Her business cards read, "Charlotte Monroe Designs, Transforming Spaces, Transforming Lives." Grant had married Jenna Hart in a small ceremony in Denver, 6 months after his divorce was finalized. According to mutual acquaintances, the marriage was already showing signs of strain. Charlotte felt nothing when she heard the news. Not satisfaction, not sadness, nothing at all. Grant Monroe had become irrelevant to her life, a lesson learned and left behind. Ava would grow up knowing she was wanted, protected, and cherished by the people who chose to stay. She would learn from her mother's example that love was not something you begged for or negotiated. It was something freely given by people who valued what you offered in return. As Charlotte watched her daughter explore the world with fearless curiosity, she realized that Grant had done them both a favor. In trying to destroy their family, he had forced Charlotte to build something better, stronger, clearer, and infinitely more honest than what had come before. Some betrayals, Charlotte thought as Ava laughed and reached for a butterfly, were actually gifts in disguise. Would you have the courage to rebuild your life from the ground up when everything you believed in crumbled around you? Your participation in our channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please leave a like to help me out. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next stories. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.